All right, guys, so today we are going to be doing 4.2, and we are going to be solving equations, quadratic equations, by graphing. So we've done this algebraically. You've solved by using the square root method. You've solved by factoring. You've also learned how to graph quadratics, but you can use those graphs that you've learned how to make to solve the quadratic. So that's what we're going to go through today, is how to use the graph to find the solutions. So there's a couple of steps in your book. Step 1, step 2, step 3. And they're probably good steps to copy down in your notes. So pause the video, and I want you to copy step 1, step 2, and step 3 into your notes. And then there's a little note underneath it. You don't need to worry about too much. It's more of a vocabulary thing, but make sure you copy down step 1, 2, and 3. So now that you've got them written down, I just want to walk you through what this looks like. So step 1, it says to write the equation. Well, first of all, here's an example, right? We've got an example right here, x squared plus 2x equals 3. And step 1 says to write the equation in standard form. And if you notice, ax squared plus bx plus c is on one side of the equal sign, and 0 is on the other side. Standard form means biggest exponent to smallest exponent. So x squared, x, no x, is on one side, and 0 is by itself on the other. So all we really need to worry about is moving everything to the same side. So step 1 for this example, I've got this 3 over here, and I need to move the 3 to this side. And in order to do that, I've got to use my railroad tracks. I'm going to minus that 3 over to this side, and I end up with x squared plus 2x minus 3. That minus 3 doesn't actually subtract from anything because there's no like terms, so we just put the minus 3 on the left. So now I have x squared minus 2x minus 3 equals 0. Step 2 that you wrote down says to graph the related function, but notice that instead of a 0, it has a y in that spot. So I'm going to rewrite this. I'm going to rewrite this as x squared plus 2x minus 3 equals y. And that's what I want to graph. So instead of a 0, I just put a y there because I want to make a graph of a line, and I can't have a 0. I need a letter there. I need my y value. So x squared plus 2x minus 3 equals y. I go to Desmos, and I've typed in all the graphs already, so you didn't have to sit here and watch me type them all. But when you type that into Desmos, this is the picture that you're going to get. Okay, you've got this parabola. It crosses the x-axis in a couple different places. And if you notice in the notes that we took, hey, where did my notes go? Come back, notes. It said step 3 was find the x-intercepts, if any. So for step 3, I'm supposed to look at the graph, and I'm looking for where the graph crosses the x-axis. So it crosses right there, and Desmos is awesome because it puts a dot, and all I have to do is click on the dot, and it gives me the answer. So it crosses the x-axis at -3, 0, and at 1, 0. So my answers are going to be x, whoops, I need a pen, x equals -3, and it crossed at x equals 1. It crossed in 2 different places, and those 2 spots are my answer, all right? Sometimes it won't cross, so you won't have a solution. Sometimes it'll only touch the line and go back up or down, so you won't have 2 solutions, you'll only get 1. It just depends on what the graph looks like, all right? So, examples, x squared minus x minus 2. Step 1 is to move everything to the same side, and that's already done. It's already moved to the same side. Step 2 was to get rid of the 0 and replace it with a y so that I can graph it. And then I'm going to graph that on Desmos, and I'm looking for the x-intercepts. I'm looking for where it crosses the x-axis. So when I graph it, x squared minus x minus 2, I notice it crosses right here and right here. And what I'm interested in are those x values where it crosses. So one of those x values is -1, this one on the left, and the other value is x equals 2. So I can say that my answers are x equals -1 and x equals 2. Those are my solutions. My solutions are where it crosses that x-axis. Okay, number 2, step 1, this -10 needs to get moved over to this other side. So I'm going to add 10 to both sides. So I end up with x squared plus 7x plus 10 equals 0. Step 2 wants me to change that 0 to a y and then graph that on Desmos. So x squared plus 7x plus 10 equals y. I'm going to graph it and look for where it crosses the x-axis. This one I've got to scroll over a little bit. This one also crosses in two places. It crosses right here at -5, and it crosses right here at -2. So my answers are x equals -5 and x equals -2. All right, number 3, x squared plus x equals 12. Step 1, I need to minus 12 on both sides so that I can get everything on the left-hand side together. So x squared plus x minus 12 equals 0. Step 2 is to change that 0 to a y and graph it on Desmos. And step 3, I look at the graph for where it crosses. So get rid of this one, x squared plus x minus 12. I've got to zoom out a lot more on this one. And what I'm looking for, there's my parabola. I'm looking for this point right here where it crosses and this point where it crosses. So -4 and +3. So x equals -4, x equals 3. I've got my two solutions, okay? All right, let's scroll down here. How about x squared minus 8x equals -16? This would be a good one to have in your notes because I have a feeling something a little bit different is going to happen. So when I add 16 to both sides, because that's step 1, right? I get x squared minus 8x plus 16 equals 0. I just did railroad tracks. And step 2 said to get rid of the 0 and replace it with a y. So you're not really getting rid of it. We're just putting a y there. And then we're going to graph, and we're going to look for where it crosses the x-axis. So when I graph this one, it looks like this. So this one looks a little bit different because my parabola, as I come close to the x-axis, I hit the x-axis right there, but then I go back up. So what that means is there's not two answers because I don't cross in two different places. I only hit in one spot, and that spot is x equals 4. So my answer is just x equals 4. All right, -x squared equals 2x plus 4, solved by graphing. I'm going to follow the same steps. Step 1, I need to get everything on the same side, okay? And here's one thing I would like to see. I don't like -x squared. I never like to see a negative in front of x squared. So I'm going to add x squared on this side, and I'm going to add x squared on this side. That way I end up with 0 equals x squared plus 2x plus 4. I like that a lot better than a -x squared. Step 2, y equals x squared plus 2x plus 4, and I'm going to graph that and see what happens. X squared plus 2x. Now I know you guys are going to have to take the time to type it in, but that would be really boring for you to watch. So x squared plus 2x plus 4. Look at this one. This parabola comes down, 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 and it only goes down to 3. It never goes down and touches the x-axis. It never crosses. So this one, my answer, is going to be no solution. It never touches the x-axis, so that means there's no solution to that equation. All right? So, bunch of problems right here to check out. X squared plus 36 equals 12x. Actually, you know what? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Pause the video, and I want you to try these 6 on your own, okay? Move everything to one side, graph what it tells you to graph, and see where you cross the x-axis. And then hit play and see if you got the right answer. All right, so for number 4, you should have had x squared plus 36 minus 12x equals 0. And these two, even though we really like to put the 12x first, it doesn't change the equation, but that's the proper way to write it. So I'm going to go ahead and switch those two spots. So x squared minus 12x plus 36, when I graph that one, I notice that the graph comes down and it only touches the x-axis at the point 6. So this one, my answer is x equals 6. Number 5, x squared plus 4x is already equal to 0. There's nothing to move over. So step 2 is just x squared plus 4x equals y. And I graph that. So when I go to my graph, this is kind of a cool one. X squared plus 4x, kind of plus 0, right? There's no number there, but it's like there's a plus 0. But when I look at my graph, there's my parabola. I'm going to cross at -4, and I'm going to cross at 0. So I get 2 answers to that one. X equals -4. No, that's not that number. That's over here. X equals -4, and x equals 0. Those are your 2 answers. Number 6, you need to add 25 to both sides. So x squared plus 10x plus 25 equals 0. I change that to a y and I graph it. X squared plus 10x plus 25, and it looks like that one hits in one spot, -5. So my answer, your answer should have been x equals -5. X squared equals 3x minus 3. So I want to minus 3x on both sides. And then I also want to add 3 to both sides. So I end up with x squared minus 3x plus 3 equals 0. And I change that to a y, type it in my calculator or my graph. And you've already done this, right? So your answer, where are we? There we are. There's my parabola. And it never hits the x-axis. So no solution. It never crosses. So I have no solution. Number 8, you would need to add 6 to both sides. Hopefully you did that already, right? Because you've already done these problems. X squared plus 7x plus 6 equals 0. Change that to a y. Type it in your calculator or your function, your Desmos or whatever it is you're using to graph these. And it looks like this line is going to cross in 2 places, -6 and -1. So x equals -6, x equals -1. Number 9 is one of those that has the minus x squared over here. So I'm going to add x squared to both sides. So I end up with x squared plus 2x plus 5 equals 0. I'm going to change that 0 to a y and graph it. And when I look at my graph, I notice my parabola is here. It's just way up above the x-axis. So no solution. It never crosses. So that would be my answer. No solution. All right. What else do we need to know? This term right here, the zeros. These answers that we're finding, like if I look at this graph, it wants me to find the zeros of f. So when I look at this graph, I notice this point and this point are where I cross. Those are called solutions, right? My solutions would be x equals -1 and x equals 3. Those are called solutions. Another word for solutions is zeros, okay? That it's the same thing. It's just another math term that you see the ACT in the book use sometimes. They call them zeros instead of solution. So it might say find the zeros, and all you have to do is solve it like we normally do. It just has a different name. They'll also ask you for, before we go down there, they also might ask you for the roots or the x-intercepts. All of these mean the same thing. All of these are looking for that point where we cross the x-axis. They're just different names for the same idea, okay? Now, some of these, the graph of f of x equals x squared plus 4x plus 1 is shown. In the book, some of the questions are going to ask you to approximate the zeros. So it just wants you to estimate. The nice thing about Desmos is if you type this into Desmos, you don't have to estimate, because when you click on those 2 points, it gives you a number, right? You don't have to guess what the number is. It actually gives it to you. So go ahead and do that. Type it into Desmos, click on those points, and get the number that it gives you. Remember, in this class, you always use 3 decimals. I don't want the answer to the nearest tenth. I want 3 numbers after the decimal. So I think this one, I believe is, let's see, that's the one that we already did. What was the graph? Now I forgot what it was. Plus 4x plus 1. Oh no, it was that one. Okay, so this one right here, I just graphed it on Desmos. When I click on those points, they're not pretty numbers. Negative 3.732 and negative 0.268. I'm okay with that. Use those numbers that it gives you. 3 decimals, write them down. And even though they're not pretty, they're good answers, all right? Okay, what else do we need to do? Find the zeros of f. These are just examples that I mean, guys, have you noticed most of you are probably already doing the homework because you just graph and find those intersecting points. It's really simple to do. These 2, type them in the calculator, type them into Desmos, and look for where those cross, all right? The first one, actually maybe pause the video and try those on your own. Come back, let's make sure you did it right. Okay, so for number 10, it gives you the function. You type it into Desmos. Ta-da! Do I have that in Desmos? Did I not type it into Desmos? -6, is that there? Oh, it is there. There we go. 14, whoa, this one's wide. Or maybe I'm just zoomed in really far. That's what it was. I was zoomed in really far. So when you type it into Desmos, you click on those 2 points, and I get -3 and 2. So x equals 0, zeros, x equals -3, x equals 2, and you're done. Graph f of x equals negative x squared plus 2x plus 2, and approximate the zeros. Desmos is awesome because you're going to graph it. You're going to click on the graph. You're going to click on these 2 points, and you don't even have to approximate because it's going to give you the values. I just need you to use 3 decimal places. So negative 0.732 x equals, and x equals, I think it was 2.732. I should probably check. 2.732. There we go. There's your 2 answers. All right, homework. What I want you to do, numbers 5 through 24, all of them. Do all 19 of those questions, and then 37 through 52, that's 15 questions. So total, you guys are going to do 34 questions on the homework today. You're graphing all of these. Guys, this should be quick. This should be easy. 34 questions. This is maybe a 20-minute homework assignment because you just type it in on Desmos. You click on the buttons. It gives you the answer. So good luck.